always check your values. Good values make for good color. So I'm going to turn this into a black and white, and that's about right. Although the front of the building could be changed to a slightly darker value, I think, to make a better value pattern. Very important that you get the value pattern right. An interesting value pattern makes an interesting painting. If you don't have a good value pattern, you don't have a good painting. It's as simple as that. The value pattern is what people will see from afar when they're looking at your painting. And if that value pattern from afar doesn't catch their attention, then they may just walk away and not bother walking up close to your painting. Now I'll add more of the tree trunks here, varying them. Some thicker, some thinner trunks, some further away, some more close up. Now they also, of course, cast a shadow. The shadow color could be some of the color of the sky being reflected into the cast shadow, as well as the complementary color of the light, which in this case would be yellow, since the color of the light is yellow, tinging everything a bit with the yellow color of the light source. So what I could do is, first of all, add a darker green. The color of the cast shadow will also change according to the surface upon which it falls. So on a green surface like this, the cast shadow will be green. But if it falls on a blue surface, that cast shadow will be more blue. So I'll pick up a little bit of the blue from the building, add that over here like this, and then back again to the green, since it's being cast onto the green grass here. Cast shadow is darker where it begins, right there, and then it gradually gets lighter. Now, in addition to the green of the cast shadow, I can add some of the blue of the sky into that cast shadow, as well as a little bit of the violet from the yellow light source. So a cast shadow can have a variety of colors, making it an interesting cast shadow. I think I'll add an edge to this walkway here. It's getting lost a little bit too much. And then this part right there, I'm going to make a lighter and brighter blue, leaning a bit toward the blue-green, not much though. That helps to draw attention here, you see? This is my center of interest, so I need to draw the attention here by adding this brighter color. That helps to draw attention. By adding an off-white to the figure, that helps to draw attention. And by placing this red warm color into the cooler surrounding colors, helps to draw attention here. But I'm going to add a brighter color to these bushes. They're getting a bit more sunlight, which helps to draw attention here as well. In addition, I'm going to add a brighter red to this door. That red helps to further draw attention to the center of interest, this area here where the figure is. I think I'm going to add a fence, see what that looks like. And that gives me a reason for adding rhythm. So maybe something like this. Just a suggestion that there's a fence here. That helps to lead the eye back. The introduction of these fence posts adds even more rhythm to this painting. So you have to think about adding rhythm to your paintings. If you don't know how to add rhythm, then that's something that you need to learn. It's very important. The best paintings have rhythm. If they don't have rhythm, they're not going to look good. in addition to these fence posts, rhythm is found here where the tree trunks are. Also, there's a rhythm of hue. The repetition of these blue colors adds a rhythm of hue. I'm going to reduce the intensity of that red just a little bit right here where the door is. So a little too strong. That's good. And it still draws the attention here. Now, I'll have to add just a suggestion of some cast shadows here, cast by these posts. And also some lines here in this walkway. And that also establishes a rhythm, the repetition of these lines like this. Once you've established the big masses of tone and color, as I've done here, then you start adding smaller and smaller shapes and the details. And I've already started adding smaller shapes. You can see that with these posts that I added. And also the awnings here are smaller shapes. And I can continue adding smaller shapes and details at this stage, making some refinements and adding some super darks, as they're called. In addition, calligraphy needs to be added, and I already started adding some calligraphy here where the walkway is. You see those lines? Those are considered calligraphy. Also, I can add some calligraphy here to the windows, like this. Keeping things loose. Don't tighten up. And also on this window here. Now I'm going to add some super darks, as I mentioned. Some really dark values, and they are the accents, and also they will add interest and help to give definition to some parts that do not read clearly enough. I've also added these lighter lines right there where the sunlight is hitting this part of the building. Now I want to point out to you the gable here is being repeated. And that gable becomes the design theme. For those of you who have taken my course, you will have learned the importance of a design theme. That theme of the open triangle, as it's called. It's open because there's no line down here completing the triangle. This open triangle is repeated throughout the painting, or if it hasn't been repeated enough yet, it will be once I continue adding more to the painting. So it's this shape or line that becomes the design theme. And I'm going to add another super dark right here at this gable, thereby establishing more of that upside down V shape, as it can be referred to. See, there's a V, but I've turned it upside down. Or an open triangle, as it can also be referred to. So you see that shape right there as well. It's there and here and here and here. And then I can also add it to smaller parts, such as right here where the awning is. You see, that also makes that kind of angled line. I think I'm going to darken the front of the building a little bit. If you remember, I looked at the painting in black and white and thought that the value was a little too light. So what I'm going to do is go to Levels and then darken it here, just a little bit. And then I'll check the values, and I think that's better. By darkening the values around this figure here, the figure now appears to attract even more attention through stronger appearing value contrast. And I need to add a dark value to this second building back here, like this, to the roof. Now I'm going to add more of those super darks that I talked about. And I'll add that to the roof here, darkening the roof overall a bit more. I'm going to darken a couple of these blue awnings just a little bit so they don't all have the same look. Add a little bit of variation, with this awning being brighter in color than these other ones, and reducing this just a little bit so that this color appears the brightest, that blue right there. And I think I'm going to add a bit more of the bright blue here, like this. This figure here is an off-white, and it looks like it's white. Always try to add a little bit of white, at least a little bit, to a painting in addition to the super darks, such as I added here, for example. And if possible, try to get them next to each other. When they're next to each other, the eye of the viewer is drawn to that part because of the strong value contrast. See me adding this darker value now to the red door here, right next to the white, and it draws the eye to that white. And I'll add some blue to the shadow side of the figure here, and an off-white blue for the side in the light. Now adjustments need to be made here and there, values, proportion, things like that. You're not going to get it right the first time. All sorts of changes will need to be made. And I think I'll add a line here underneath the window there, and one right there as well. Also, I need to add a shadow side to the awnings, like this, and this one to give it some form. Don't try to straighten everything out and make everything look perfect. Keep it loose, free looking, spontaneous looking. That adds interest. Things can look somewhat distorted. That adds life. Now to add those super darks near the figure to draw attention to the figure. And the super darks I'm adding are the darks seen where the bushes are. So something like this, right there, you see? Right around where the figure is. Helps to draw attention there. And then you fade out the value as the value moves further away from the center of interest, from the figure. Don't make it that dark over here. Make it more dark here. What I'm going to do now is add a little awning right over the doorway here, like this, and add a darker value to the side to give it some form. And I could add a pattern like this, these lines, two-dimensional pattern, and you can see that that helps to draw attention to the figure even more. And it also brings in some green into the building here, which is seen here where the grass is. So by bringing in some green into the building, I help to tie the building to the grass here, so I can add even more green than just this little awning here, and I can pick up some of the green from the foreground here and then add it to various parts of the building here like this, thereby helping to further tie the foreground into the building, the green foreground into the building, but don't overdo it, just a few dabs of the green to tie the two areas together even more. And also within the roof, some green can be added. Needs to be a dark green, of course, since it is a dark roof. And it further helps to add color variety. The green awning here is the complementary color of the red, which is found on the door. Therefore, there's a strong hue contrast here. Matter of fact, you can see the most interesting variety of color within this area where the center of interest is located. The surrounding areas don't have this kind of color variety and color contrast that is found here. This kind of color variety and interest needs to be applied to the area where the center of interest is, while keeping the surroundings more simple in color. Reflected light needs to be applied to the shadows. So some of this brighter color found on the grass here is reflected into the shadow side. So some of that kind of green that I'm adding here can be added to the shadow. So what I'm doing is applying the principle of design called repetition, and it's color repetition. There are all sorts of different kinds of repetition, and that's what can really tie together all of the various parts of the painting into a unified whole. This kind of repetition of the elements of design, such as color, texture, shape, and so on. Things you need to learn. You won't be able to paint really good pictures unless you really have learned all the elements of picture making and are able to apply them to a painting or drawing. That's what it's all about. That's what makes it possible for these great artists to produce stunning work. They don't just sit down at their easel and start painting mindlessly. They have all this knowledge to draw upon that they have acquired through hard study, through learning those secrets, if you want to call them that. They're only secrets if you haven't heard about them. But you can learn about them. Unfortunately, there just aren't enough places where you can learn all of these elements of picture making that make for really great paintings and drawings. And in addition to knowing and understanding these elements of picture making, it's also the personality of the artist that comes through. What kind of personality you have will also determine what kind of paintings you're going to be producing. Now I'm going to add a cast shadow to the figure standing there. The shadow could be green, since the surface upon which that shadow is falling is green. However, I can be more imaginative if I want to, and apply the complementary color of the light source. The light source is yellow, therefore the shadow can be made violet looking, like I'm doing now, instead of green. And if you look over here where this shadow is, right there, you can see that there is violet within that shadow. It's not just green. There's also blue in the shadow of the trees here, and you can see the blue right there, a little bit of that blue. So shadow color contains different colors. It's not just all one dark color. If you do that, you're going to end up with a dull, dead-looking color for shadow. When doing your painting, don't be literal. If you're going to be literal, that means you're going to be copying everything that you see so that it looks exactly like the subject does. And then you wind up with a rather unimaginative and uncreative looking painting. Rather dull and dead looking. This rough color sketch that I'm doing here is a good example, I think, of showing you the value of not being literal, being more creative, more imaginative in the interpretation of the subject that you're painting. This building doesn't look like this in reality. I've changed it by applying my imagination, by not being literal. So I'm avoiding reality. I'm making decisions as to what should be exaggerated, what should be eliminated, what should be added, and therefore I'm coming up with my own version of reality. I think I'm going to darken the whole thing just a little bit using levels, like this. And I'm going to repeat the red on the door, and repeat it over here where the green bushes are, like this. This further helps to draw attention here. And usually when you have a strong accent like the red here, sometimes you can just have one accent, but usually it's also a good idea to just repeat that accent somewhere else, but not as strong. So therefore I've repeated the red in the red flowers here, but you can see that they are not as saturated as the red on the door. And that prevents the eye from being attracted too much to this part and more to where the door is more saturated right there. As I'm looking at the painting, I can see that this part of the painting right there is drawing too much attention away from the center of interest, which is there, of course. So therefore, the value contrast here needs to be reduced. It's too strong, and therefore the eye is attracted here. In addition, there is too strong of a hue contrast, the yellow-orange contrasting with the green too much. So contrast needs to be reduced within this area so that the eye isn't distracted there away from the center of interest. And I can do that by, let's say, adding some blue here like this, and maybe a little bit of green as well, right there. And then I have to go in there and erase some of this color that is covering the tree trunks and branches. Another important principle that you need to apply is the design principle of alternation to your paintings to make them more interesting, more exciting to look at. See, these are all the kind of things that you need to learn about and be able to apply. So the principle of alternation is very important. So, for example, where these trees are right here, I'm going to add a lighter, brighter green, something like this right there, where the sun is falling on those leaves. And keep your shapes irregular. Regular looking shapes, like geometric shapes, are the most uninteresting shapes. So if the shape looks too regular, too uniform all the way around, then go in there and make the shape more irregular like I'm doing now. And I'll darken it a little bit right there like this. Add a little blue to it, get more color variety in there, and then also some warmer color, a little bit of red, orange maybe. You see a little bit of various warm, cool colors, adding color variety. The principle of alternation can be seen within this one shape here. And by the way, you can see that there are several trees, but they have all been fused together to make one overall shape, one mass of value and color. And here is another principle that has been applied, which is the principle of economy. Instead of having 4 or 5 individual tree shapes, I simplified all of them by combining them or merging them into one overall shape. Thereby I've simplified this whole area here, this whole part of the painting. And you can also see that back here, where this tree or trees are. Just basically one overall simple shape like that. There may be more trees and bushes here, but I've combined them or merged them all together to form just one large simple overall shape, thereby applying the principle of economy, which simplifies your painting when you apply that principle. Now getting back to the principle of alternation. There is alternation within this one shape here, and you can see it right here. There is a lighter value right there seen against the darker value of the building. But then when you look over here, it's the reverse. The darker tree seen against the lighter sky. And I'm going to turn this into a black and white, and you'll be able to see it better. You see? Here's the dark against the light, and then it reverses or alternates to light against dark. Applying the principle of alternation makes a big difference in how this area here looks. I think you can see that it now looks much more interesting than it did before I applied the principle of alternation. Here's how it looked before. It looks rather dull compared to this version, doesn't it? So you can see how important the principle of alternation is. And the principle of alternation can be applied to all of the elements of design, not just value and color, but all the other ones that you've learned about from my videos. Also, I should mention that, remember what I said about the theme, the design theme being this angled line here? Well, you can see it within the tree shape here. It comes to a point like that. So there's an angle there. When you take the whole shape, it makes a triangle and it acts as a kind of arrow that is pointing in the direction here of the center of interest. Now I need to add some more of these angled lines to repeat this motif and help to tie the painting together even more into a greater or even greater unified whole. So I have to find places where I can add that additional broken line. And of course there's that broken line right there, and then over here on that other building back there as well. I could maybe add that broken line over here where the path is. So instead of making a more curved line like that, it could be more of an angled line like I'm adding now. You see? And same over here. So I have to make a change so that it looks more angled. I'm going to create a bit more of a busy area here where the figure is by adding some of that white. So I have these white flowers here. And that busy area helps to draw attention to this area here. I can add some more alternation of value, and I could add it right over here to this part of the painting. So I add a little bit of that lighter value against that distant building. So I have something like this. Light against dark, but then up here it's the reverse. Dark against the lighter background. Let me turn this into a black and white and you can see it better. Now the value contrast over here is not so strong that it detracts from the center of interest. Now these flowers that I've added, they create, as I mentioned, a busy area, and this is where an understanding of texture comes in. And when to use this kind of texture, which is form texture, the repetition of forms creates textures. There are different kinds of textures that you need to learn about. And form textures is one kind of texture. Now the whole painting here has a texture to it, and this is a surface texture. And this rough texture that is found throughout the painting, and because it's found throughout the painting, unifies the painting. The same texture is used everywhere, and because of that, there is this unity. It helps to tie together the entire painting. It is one of the additional elements that helps to unify the painting. Also, you can see that there is that angle again, that broken line as it can be referred to. You see? And then maybe up here where this tree is, I could make somewhat of a point there, and thereby, again, adding that broken line up there as well. I think I'm going to work on the chimney here, adding a blue to the chimney right there, like that, and to the other one. So that needs a little bit of work. Again, I'm not being exact and precise in making straight lines. Since everything is somewhat crooked, the chimney needs to be somewhat crooked as well. If anything here were made perfectly straight, then that would stand out too much and it wouldn't be part of the rest of the painting. It wouldn't harmonize with the rest of the painting, in other words. Keep everything consistent. If you're going to be loose everywhere. I did a little more work on the painting that you didn't see, so I added this part to the building and also these windows to that distant building there. Now I'm getting close to finishing up this rough color sketch. It's not really a finished painting, but for some artists, they may consider this a finished painting. They may not go further than this, and that's fine. You can do that. There are many artists that stop right here, and that's the painting. And I probably wouldn't add much more to this painting if I wanted to turn this into a finished painting. Now, one of the things I think I will add is some birds flying here, something like that, and maybe put an antenna up here to add more interest. I'm going to add some more calligraphy to the walkway here. These little spots and the lines, they're considered calligraphy, and they help to add interest through this texture that is added because of the repetition of these little spots, and maybe a little red over here, some flowers, red flowers, and on the other side over here, say right there, and maybe a couple of yellow flowers too, like this, to add more interest, but not too much interest. If I make the other parts of the painting just as interesting as this part, then the eye is going to be distracted to those other parts too much and not focus here where I want the eye to go. A few dark spots here and there where the grass is, and on the other side. Then where the shadows are, I can add some dark spots there, which then help to make the shadow look a bit more transparent. If the center of interest becomes too much of a bullseye like this, riveting the attention there too much, then what could be done is to add a contrast somewhere else so that the eye is diverted from the center of interest a bit and drawn to another part of the painting. And it could be something like adding a light over here like this in the window, which draws the eye up to that light and to this part of the painting. Now I could lower saturation a bit like that. And that also helps to add a bit more interest to this area of the painting. In addition to this light being a bit of a distraction to the center of interest, this part of the tree also distracts a bit, because when the eye enters the picture, it's going to enter here where the road is, and then it's going to be diverted a bit to this tree here, and the tree is pointing in the direction of the figure, so therefore the eye continues on its path toward the center of interest. So there are these lesser contrasts that help to divert the attention a bit from the center of interest and keep the center of interest from attracting too much attention. Or, in other words, becoming too dominant. To unify the painting even more, it's a good idea to go to Photo Filter, and since there is this yellow light falling on everything, everything is tinged a little bit with yellow, as I pointed out to you earlier. And what I'm going to do now is select the right yellow here to give everything a tinge of yellow, something like this maybe. And I think that works better. So everything has a little bit of yellow in it, and therefore a little bit of the yellow of the color of the light. And this helps to unify the colors a bit more. To be an artist, you need to think like an artist. Don't think of subject matter. Think of shapes. Think of color. Think of texture. Think of pattern. Think of line. Think of form. The last thing you should think about is that this is a building. The first thing you need to think about is that this is a shape. Artists think first of the elements of design, not the subject matter. And shape is one of the elements of design, one of the most important elements of design. As an artist, think of yourself as an entertainer, a visual entertainer. You need to make your paintings visually interesting and exciting. Use bold contrast, color variety, and interesting shapes to make your paintings exciting and interesting to look at. The great Impressionist Claude Monet said, "To see, we must forget the name of the thing we are looking at." Forget the name house. Forget the name trees. Forget the name figure. But do think in terms of shape and color and values and texture, as I pointed out to you. That is what Claude Monet is talking about. He is saying, don't think of subject matter. Think of the elements of design that make up the subject matter. To quote another great artist, Paul Cézanne, who is considered a post-impressionist painter, he lived between 1839 to 1906, and he said, "We should not be content with strict reality, with the transposition that a painter makes, but with a personal vision that gives to the transposition of nature a new interest. He unfolds, as a painter, that which has not yet been said. He translates it into absolute terms of painting, that is to say, something other than reality. This, indeed, is no longer shallow imitation." I hope that you will apply the things that you've learned in this video. I think you're going to see dramatic improvement in your color work, as well as in design, if you follow the things that I've shown you. And what you've seen in this video is really only a small sampling of the many, many things that you really need to know and understand if you want to paint really good or great pictures. These ideas, these principles that you've seen in this video are the classical ideas and principles that all of the great artists throughout the centuries have known and used in their work, and that's one of the main reasons why they are such great paintings. So without a knowledge of these classical principles, you can't possibly paint great pictures. That's how important these principles are. So you need to learn them. And it's not easy to learn all of these things and be able to apply them. It takes a lot of work, a lot of hard work, and not everyone is willing to go through that hard work. If you'd like to see more videos like this from my YouTube channel, then please subscribe to my channel. And it would be great if you could mention me to your friends and also at your favorite social media site, such as Facebook. That would be great. And now it's time to say so long